Hi, everybody. Welcome to Lucky to Have You, our St. Patrick's Day Friends for Life event. Today's event is going to be a question and answer session with many of our on-campus departments, as well as a few community resources. We'll be focusing on questions about alcohol use as a Penn State student, the impacts it may have on your friendships, and how to maintain a healthy relationship with a substance. My name is Anna Ricco. I'll be moderating today's event. I'm an addiction specialist at the Health and Wellness Center, and I'm also a licensed mental health counselor. I'm joined by a few of my colleagues from Counseling and Psychological Services.
Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Mock. I am a licensed professional counselor and the mental health outreach coordinator at Penn State Altoona.
And I'm Jenna Frykirk. I'm another one of the mental health counselors at Penn State Altoona's Health and Wellness Center. And then I also help to run the Friends for Life program.
Thanks, Jenna. And we're also joined by the Office of Student Conduct.
Hello, Dr. Jennifer Sabrin, Director of Student Conduct and Title IX resource person on the Altoona campus. And so I work with students who potentially violate our policy or have experienced sexual misconduct related incidences. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Jennifer. And we are also joined by Officer Troy Johannades from University Police Services.
Hi, Troy Johannades. I'm a sergeant with University Police and Public Safety. I've been with Penn State for about 7 years and a total of 28 years in law enforcement. Welcome.
Wow. Monica Jones from PennDOT.
Hi, like she said, I'm Monica Jones. I'm the safety press officer for the District 9 region of PennDOT, which includes Blair County. And I work with these folks on the Blair County Drug and Alcohol Committee doing safety programs around the community.
Great, thank you. And Rebecca Lidwell from Blair Drug and Alcohol Partnerships.
Hello, yes, Becky. I'm the supervisor of prevention department for Blair Drug and Alcohol. I'm also an alumni of Penn State Altoona, and my job now really focuses on increasing protective factors in our communities and decreasing the risk factors.
Awesome, thank you so much, guys. So this presentation is going to be recorded and uploaded to YouTube for you to view later. If you were to have any questions during or after the questions I have asked, please enter them into the chat box and somebody's going to be looking out for them. The first 5 students to ask questions or give input will receive an Amazon gift card and a Friends for Life t-shirt. So let's get started. Jenna, could you just give us a brief overview of what Friends for Life is?
Yeah, so Friends for Life is a program that's unique to Penn State Altoona's campus, and it was started about 12 years ago. Its focus is on building lifelong friendships in college and making sure that you look out for each other throughout your time in college, especially in tough situations where alcohol or other factors might be involved. So throughout the school year, we partner with different groups and programs to continue to help our students stay committed to having each other's backs, especially when your friends might need you the most.
Thank you, Jenna. Jennifer, could you give us a brief overview of the alcohol policies in place for Penn State students?
So essentially, when it comes to alcohol, it is not permitted with students who are especially under the age. Other ones, though, however, could be contributing to minors, as well as driving under the influence. And so some of our common violations related to alcohol are that possession, use, or under the illegal age, as well as excessive alcohol. So somebody who has blown a BAC and may have to go to the hospital. Also DUI, we've had several of those this past year, as well as in the presence of alcohol is also a charge that's found in the residence halls. And so you could be in a room or a gathering with students, alcohol could be present, you might not be drinking, but that is also a charge that takes place in the halls. And so essentially, just because you're over the age of 21 doesn't mean that you can't violate our policy, but majority of our students, especially at Altoona, are underage. And so then therefore anything related to alcohol, even if there's alcohol in the bottom of a bottle that is, emptied, if there's any trace of that alcohol, it could be a violation. So those are kind of the quick basics of alcohol and the violations that could potentially be violated on our policy.
Thank you. Troy, what are some of the most common ways that you've seen students violate the policies?
Well, Anna, we have a dual duty as police officers. We enforce criminal law, and we also enforce allegations of student conduct. We file them with the Office of the Student Conduct for them to be heard for conduct violations. So most of our alcohol-related incidents are possession by underage, furnishing by an overage to an underage person. Being drunk, public drunk, or drinking underage. And we also have fake IDs. So when people want to purchase that alcohol for themselves, they get themselves a fake ID, which is relatively easy, but it's also easy to investigate. And then you have your DUIs, which even if it's over the age of 21, there's BAC limits, and under the age of 21, it's very, very minor BAC where they can be DUI.
Absolutely. So this is for Jennifer or Troy or both of you. What are some of the consequences of violating these policies or laws?
So it could range. Most of the consequences, majority result in some type of alcohol education. So whether it's our AWARE program that's through our student health and wellness, just as a heads up to folks, there is a cost to that for the student. But it could be one of the 3 classes, depending on the situation, depending on the number of times somebody's been, that has violated that alcohol charge. I've had students who have had 3 alcohol charges in a month, and then therefore that outcome was a suspension. So it really depends on the situation. Same with DUIs. Sometimes it is, I've given community service. Sometimes it is one that there's been restitution because there's been damage to property. And that one, an example, also resulted in a suspension as well. So it really, there's a range depending on that violation or how often. And so that's kind of the gamut there. I know that Troy would probably speak to more of the law enforcement side. And I'll let him go to that one, but that's kind of our rough piece. If you violated those are the sanctions that would come with it. So anywhere from that conduct warning with an alcohol education up to a suspension, depending on what it is. Troy?
Yes. So our dual aspect of enforcing is the allegation which we send to student conduct. So we don't enforce any of the violations. That is just the information we provide to the Student Affairs Division. But as far as criminal, they go to court. A underage drinking is a summary offense. Possession or drinking itself, mainly they have to do an AWARE program, which they can actually do that, satisfying the college's student conduct violation as well. But it's a fine. There used to be a license suspension here in Pennsylvania, but that was removed through litigation last year, I guess. But as far as furnishing, that can be a misdemeanor offense. And you can actually be on probation or actually do jail time. DUIs, depending on the amount of offenses, you have, lots of fines, very heavy fines in the alcohol-related offenses. And you can also go to jail after several of those violations and license suspensions. And, then you have to deal with the conduct violations as well here on the university.
Okay, thanks, Troy. So my next question, you guys kind of already answered, but I'm just going to recap it. So a student, no matter where they are, is always a Penn State student. So if they get in trouble off campus, it sounds like, if university police were to catch them drinking, that would get reported to the Office of Student Conduct. But what about if a student is in their hometown and they get in trouble, or if they're in state college and they get in trouble? Do they still have to follow through with university sanctions?
Yeah, so we were just talking like State Patty's Day, right, as an example. So, or we often see, so the way the Student Conduct Office works is we receive referrals from faculty, staff, students, parents, outside entities of law enforcement, such as Logan Township, Altoona, University Police, State College Police, Patton Township. It really depends on the referrals that we receive. We've also had it where a student might be in Philly and we've received information based on a potential violation. And so really it depends on those referrals that are received. And then from there, it's just as you said, Anna, it's you're considered a Penn State student no matter where you're at. So you could be on a school trip in Florida for a conference or something and violate the alcohol policy based on your age, but you're essentially wherever you are, you're that Penn State student. So that policy pertains to you. So a lot of students at local apartment complexes for us going up and tailgating, had students who have stolen beer at tailgates, who have been excessively drunk at tailgates, or at a football game, whatever it might be. So we do receive those, we have conversations, we see if there's a violation, and we move forward to address the behavior and the concern to hopefully prevent it from happening again. So yeah, no matter where you are, you're considered a Penn State student. And so it's one of those that, I didn't think it counted because I was at my parents' tailgate at State College. I'm sorry, you still did this, and it violates that policy. So just be aware where you're at, and your actions do have consequences when we receive those referrals. So, yep.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about legal violations, Troy, you said like the word summary misdemeanor. Do students who get like that summary offense or that misdemeanor offense, do they have to go to court for that violation?
Yes, they do. A summary violation is just a ticket, a non-traffic ticket that's issued to the person either in person during the violation or sent via summons through the office of the district justice. So once they receive that, they can either plead guilty or not guilty. Some of the offenses have to, like an underage drinking, if they have more than one violation, the fines and penalties increase. So they can't just plead guilty. They have to show up in front of the district justice for the penalty phase of it. So they have to do that within 10 days. If they don't do that within 10 days, then a warrant would be issued for their arrest. And the constables or other police departments, anyone that has contact with them, would take them into custody and take them before the judge for that.
Oh my goodness. That seems silly to not send a letter back within 10 days, huh? For all of that.
Yeah, for sure. But it happens quite often.
I'm sure.
And if I could just add to Dr. Saburn's last post, with these violations, we are contacted by the local police departments around. So anytime there's a violation of a student, they're calling us, and we're filing the referral through Office of Student Affairs so they can address it. But like you said, they are a student no matter what, wherever they are. So if they're in Baltimore, Maryland on vacation and they have a student ID and they're not being forthright with the police department, they call Penn State Police. We learn about a lot of the violations. There are occasions where we might not find out about them, but for the most part, the actions of the students are found out, and if it's a violation of student conduct, referrals are filed to be heard by them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Troy. So we've talked a little bit about DUIs. Monica, could you talk about DUIs and specifically drug driving and how these things might impact students?
Certainly. We at PennDOT have been tracking through a wide variety of statistics the numbers of alcohol-related fatalities, drug driving in particular. And here in the state of Pennsylvania, the numbers for overall alcohol-related fatalities have come down a little over the past couple of years. But what is important and has significantly jumped as a problem is the number of fatalities and accidents based on drugged driving, things that prescription medications or other drugs in a person's system can cause them to be impaired to the point that they cannot drive. Things like marijuana, opiates, meth, amphetamine, speed, even huffing can render a person unable to drive a vehicle safely. So we've been trying to create awareness as much as possible for drivers, young drivers, students in particular, that it doesn't matter what substance is in your system, drugged driving is drugged driving and is treated the same as any other alcohol-related incident, crash, or impaired driving type of situation. And I'm sure Troy can speak to this very well, but we're also working to educate the public that police officers are being trained very rigorously on ways to detect drugged driving in addition to alcohol driving. Drug impaired reinforcement classes are available, and they are being taken by them to learn the different ways that they can affect you and to look out for the signs of a person. If they're driving in a car and they get pulled over, these officers are learning how to determine whether they're on a stimulant or a depressant or some sort of narcotic analgesic or even cannabis. And those types of situations, like I said before, are just as dangerous. We've also combined forces with law enforcement on what's called an ignition interlock system. And I can't speak specifically to whether or not students directly are affected, but I do believe that anyone who is cited for a DUI in the state of Pennsylvania has to go through some sort of ignition interlock system installation on their vehicle where a person breathes into an apparatus. And if your blood alcohol level is too high, your vehicle will not start. So that is something that has been in the forefront of our efforts from a safety standpoint here at PennDOT. I kind of am interested if Troy knows anything more about those things. I'm kind of putting you on the spot, Troy. But the state has started a pretty broad and rigorous campaign to educate people about those things. We always encourage everyone to plan ahead, whether it's designated drivers or making sure you're staying in a safe space, not traveling if you plan on drinking over St. Patrick's Day or in general. And even a little bit of alcohol can impair someone's ability to drive safely. So we just want to keep people reminded of those particular things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Monica.
Could I add a little bit to that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So thanks, Monica. Yeah, a lot of what you had said has been driven through, the safety aspect of the PennDOT working with law enforcement across the state. So as far as drugged driving, there is what they call DRE, drug recognition experts within law enforcement, and they are very rigorous trainings to get certified, and they go through 3 different phases. And there's one almost in every department, or at least every several departments. And if officers come in contact with somebody who they think is under the influence of drugs and or alcohol, and they can't tell for sure because they were unable to do a field sobriety test, then they can call this the RE expert, and they come and they ask the questions, they go through their training. And if they meet so many clues, then they are arrested for DUI. And most of those end up in 10-panel drug screens to see what's in the system. And, it's all about safety. There's been so many lives taken unnecessarily from the abuse of alcohol and drugs. Mm-hmm. And it has been getting better because of the awareness. And this is part of what we're doing here today. So as far as ignition interlocked, it's not required as of now. But there are a lot of people that, they go out and maybe get a DUI, and their whole life is driving. So if they are suspended from their driving and they can't do that, then they can't pay their bills. So they have to apply for programs, and it's very expensive, but it's one way to get them back on the road, and the ability to still live their lives with their driving. And they have to actually blow into a machine that's installed into their car, and it knows if that's that person or if it's somebody else. Like, they can't say, "Hey, I need you to blow into this tube here so I can drive my car." So, but it's very expensive, and just like the fines. And so PennDOT and law enforcement across the state and places like Penn State Health and Wellness and Friends for Life, putting out the information for awareness and hopefully saving lives.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Troy. And the thing I always say to my students is that it's 2021. There's no reason to get behind the wheel ever, even if you've only had one drink. Because to somebody who does not drink a lot and has very little tolerance, one drink can be enough to impair you behind the wheel. So Lyft exists, Uber exists, staying in place is a thing. I always say, if you really don't have anything else, call your mom. Like, she will take care of you. Like, somebody will take care of you. So there's always an option, and getting behind the wheel is not one of them, for sure. So thank you for sharing that, guys. I think that gives us generally a better understanding of some of the ways that conduct and legal consequences are associated with alcohol use. But what we might not always think about are the ways alcohol impacts our physical health. So Rebecca, could you explain some of the ways that alcohol can impact our physical health?
Sure. So drinking moderately and in a responsible way is obviously your safest bet. The more you drink, the more damage alcohol does to your body. So instantly, alcohol irritates the lining of your stomach. This can cause heartburn, diarrhea, or vomiting, depending on the amount you consume. Alcohol also impacts your vision and decision-making, which can have ripple effects on your physical health. Over time, drinking can lead to multiple increased risks, including stroke, cancer, dementia, high blood pressure, and heart attacks, to name a few. Alcohol also prevents your body from properly absorbing vitamins and minerals from the food you eat. So again, over time, it could lead to a form of malnutrition. And then on the flip side, though, alcohol can lead to increased weight gain, depending on what you drink. It all contains calories, right? And those calories add up pretty quickly in a college setting where drinking tends to be more common and heavily consumed. And it's a depressant, so you're less likely to crave that physical activity when you're using the substance. And then lastly, like, if you're worried about appearance, alcohol is not the best for your skin. It actually dilates your pores, which can lead to pimples, and then it speeds up the aging process of your skin as well.
I don't think I knew that about it dilating your pores, but that's definitely something to consider.
Yes.
Wow. So thank you, Rebecca, so much. In addition to the myriad of ways that alcohol impacts our bodies, it can affect our minds similarly. Mental health concerns are at an all-time high, especially given the state of our world, the pandemic, the election, systemic racism, a million other things that are on our minds right now. So adding alcohol to the mix can sometimes give us the illusion of relieving life's worries, but it can often lead to worsening symptoms. Jess, what are the main mental health concerns that alcohol impacts? Does it affect things like anxiety and depression?
Hi, thanks, Anna. Yeah, so in the short term, yes, it does, and the long term as well. Aside from, obviously the stress due to having a violation of the student code of conduct policy, maybe taking the classes, telling your parents that you violated the policy and you now have these legal implications, that's stressful already in itself. If you have to go to court, that sort of thing can also compound the already anxious, feelings that you have. But in the short term, like, alcohol can feel positive, right? It can alleviate those worries that maybe you have or make you feel like you are, able to overcome something that's stressful in the moment and relax. But over the long term, it is a depressant. So what that means is it affects our thoughts, feelings, and actions in a way that it slows our bodies down, and it allows us to lower our inhibitions. In a very small amounts, though, alcohol can act like a stimulant, and it can lead to things like increased aggression, feeling more anxious, more keyed up in small amounts. But in larger amounts, it does lead to feeling more as a depressant. But it definitely affects anxiety and depression. So with depression, it can feel like a vicious cycle, right? So you start to drink because you feel depressed, and then, you maybe get temporarily relief. And then over the long term, it leads back to feeling more depressed, because then you might feel some guilt, you might feel worthlessness from feeling hungover the next day. And then you obviously feel guilty, maybe due to some actions or behaviors that you had while you were under the influence. Also, too, anxiety can definitely become worse with prolonged alcohol use. So, have you ever noticed that maybe when you're hungover, you feel more anxious? That's because of your body's chemicals trying to react and trying to, regulate itself. So it can actually make you feel more anxious in the long run. Also, too, there are studies out there that show that alcohol use is linked to self-harm, psychosis, and suicide, because it lowers our inhibitions to make decisions that we typically wouldn't make whenever we are sober.
Very good. Thanks, Jess. So as a counselor on campus, and maybe we can all speak to this, Jess, Jenna, and myself, what are some of the most common ways students are negatively impacted by alcohol misuse?
I'll just start it off. So it definitely affects students' academics. So sometimes it can make drinking a priority over your academics. It can get hard to complete your assignments and your homework, and because you're prioritizing drinking or going out and maybe partying over, what you are here for in the first place, right? Like, drinking is a part of the college experience, but it doesn't have to be all of the college experience. Engaging in high risk behavior. So when it lowers your inhibitions, maybe you're engaging in having more sexual partners, and you have to, go to the Health and Wellness Center for STI testing, risking injury, like cuts, bruises, like, a nasty, scar on your face because of a night of drunkenness doesn't really look really good, in the long term. You have that scar for life. You can become a victim of assault, which can be either physical or sexual. And obviously, too, like losing privileges. Maybe your parents, don't want you to come back because you violated those policies, and now you have to complete programs and things like that. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to any of those other implications on college students. I'm sure we all have had so many different, run-ins with that.
Jenna, did you want to say anything about what you've seen in your own students?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk in a little bit more about the social impacts, but that was kind of one of the things that first kind of came to my mind in terms of especially for people that maybe do deal with social anxiety and things like that, going to places where drinking is pretty present with other peers actually can be pretty anxiety producing for certain people in terms of how to navigate that, and how do my drinking habits compare to other people's, and how do I say no if I actually don't want to have more drinks or things like that. So I really think about the social aspect and how that actually can create a lot of anxiety of trying to navigate different people's drinking habits, and even how certain friends kind of respond when they've been drinking, in terms of I have this friend, but when they get drunk, they say really nasty things, or they don't act like themselves. So I think that, that social aspect is what I tend to think about a lot, in addition to all of the many things that Jess mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jess, you mentioned academics, and the first thing I think of are when I'm running the AWARE program, and we talk about what are some of the negative impacts of your alcohol misuse when I'm drinking too much. Of course, there's hangovers, blacking out, throwing up, all of those things, the physical things that we all think of. But additionally, the amount of alcohol you drink can really impact your sleep habits. So although we think oh my gosh, I'm going to fall asleep, and I'm going to fall asleep so hard, and I don't wake up throughout the whole night, that must mean I'm getting good sleep. And that's not true. So what alcohol does is it shortens our sleep cycle. So when we have a full sleep cycle, we're coming out of sleep to a really light sleep and falling into deep, deep sleep. And what alcohol does is it shortens those. So I'm never really coming fully out of sleep, and I'm never really getting deep into sleep. Which that's why generally after a night of heavy drinking, you wake up and you don't feel well rested, even if you slept 12 hours, because your rest wasn't restful. Yeah, and something I also think about too is like how that would affect you the next day. Like if I'm drinking on Saturday night, Sunday's meant for studying, getting ready for class on Monday, and I'm not fully rested to do that either, my academics could suffer greatly. So that's just something to think about for sure. What are some symptoms that students should be looking out for, like if they think that they are misusing alcohol? Like what are some things that they should be aware of, Jess?
Yeah. So the first thing is like being unable to limit the amount of alcohol that you drink. Say that you set a limit for yourself of 3 to 4 drinks and you quickly surpass that limit and it happens over and over and over again. Maybe you have this desire that you want to cut down how much you drink because you are aware of how bad you feel the next day, or it's starting to impact your academics, but you've had some unsuccessful attempts to actually cut back. So like you're not actually able to cut back when you want to do so. Mm-hmm. If you're spending a lot of time drinking, getting alcohol, recovering from the alcohol use, so the amount of time that you're spending, with your life being centered around alcohol in that way, feeling a strong craving or an urge to drink, maybe you're unable to feel major obligations at work, at school, maybe you're missing work, maybe you're missing classes, missing assignments, due to that repeated alcohol use. Basically continuing to drink, even though you know it's causing you physical, social, emotional, and interpersonal problems. Obviously too, experiencing withdrawal symptoms. So those withdrawal symptoms can be like nausea, sweating, shaking, trembling, when you don't drink. And then you drink to avoid getting those symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're describing there is like the beginning of alcoholism, an addiction to alcohol. So I guess that brings the next question, which is, can alcoholism be inherited?
So according to the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, the behavioral traits parents can pass on to their children towards alcohol is a predisposition towards alcohol abuse and addiction. So in the short term, yes, they can pass on that predisposition to alcohol use, but there are also environmental factors and, your development over time too, that will help you basically lower your risk or increase your risk.
Absolutely. We always hear nature versus nurture, but really it's nature and nurture, like what I'm born with plus the environment that I grew up in. So yes, I could have inherited this alcoholism gene, but if I grew up in an environment where either there's no drinking or we talk about how to drink safely or whatever, if it's not the center of my life and it's treated responsibly, then maybe I don't end up treating alcohol, abusing alcohol. So where can students go if they believe that they have a problematic relationship with alcohol?
So students can first and foremost reach out to the Health and Wellness Center and schedule either a triage counseling appointment with me. And then, I can refer you to Anna. She's our certified addictions counselor on campus. And then we also have the different groups. So if you want to just be, get more information on alcohol, or substance use in general, you're more than welcome to volunteer to be in those groups if you want to participate. I know Anna has some other great resources as well.
I'm putting something in the chat box, but for those of you who are watching this video later, there is a website called screenu.org. And it's meant for college students. And if you go through this link, it will link you up with Penn State Screen You. And at the end, it will give you resources on campus or in the local area. If you do ding for like moderate alcohol abuse, something like that, they'll refer you back to campus resources, which I think is really great. So thank you so much for sharing that information. I think it really shows that alcohol is much deeper than getting drunk with your friends on the weekend, because in fact, alcohol misuse can be a major factor in friendships and relationships during college, which is exactly what Friends for Life aims to address. So Jenna, how might alcohol impact students' friendships?
Yeah. So if you personally drink alcohol, some of the reasons you might enjoy drinking or the reasons you engaged in drinking might be very social, something you do with your friends or a way to meet new people. You might feel like it helps you to be more social or outgoing, makes it easier to talk to more people who you might not have felt as relaxed to talk with otherwise, or helps you have fun with friends at the end of a hard week. But on the flip side of that, some of the downsides to drinking, especially excessive drinking, can also impact you socially. You might say things you regret, become more emotional or angry, act or do things you wouldn't normally do when you're sober. And at its worst, if you're actually binge drinking specifically, it can start to cost people friends and social status. So there's a tipping point, especially where excessive drinking can actually hurt someone's friendships and get in the way of meeting new people.
Absolutely. So how can students support their friends and really have their backs when alcohol is involved?
Yeah. So if we have time at the end of today, Anna and I are going to share some different safe drinking strategies. If not, we'll definitely provide a link to another program that we've done that actually covers some of those. But what I actually really encourage you to do is to establish, look through and think about these different safe drinking strategies and establish a few that you actually want to do with your friends and commit to doing them together. I just feel like it's so much easier to make different decisions or a few changes to your typical drinking habits when you know you're not in it alone and that other people have your back when you're drinking. So for example, before you go out and start drinking with friends, agree together what everyone's drinking limit is going to be for that night, and then check in with each other periodically to make sure everyone is still doing okay and kind of holding to those limits for themselves.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great tip. So
yeah, I have a quick question or a quick thing to add.
Yeah.
From the conduct side of, that plan or whatever. But so I'm assuming students have heard of the word silly week or the phrase silly week and understanding what that is. And so, I've had students who have been in my office who are first semester students, but they listened to a returning student and they decided to participate in silly week because that's what others had told them to do. And so as you interact with, students who might be first timers, and they say, what is this? Or, really kind of support them in a way that kind of steers them a different direction, or at least explains exactly what it is because of those consequences. Because the student that I can think of right off the bat, they got off right off the bat with silly week. And then a month later, they're in another second charge for alcohol. And then therefore, they're looking at potential, removal from campus or whatever that might be. And so as those different, whether it be State Patty's Day or silly week or different, hey, it's the wellness days tomorrow. Guess what we're going to do tonight? Not, I would guess that some people might choose to drink that night because they don't have school the next day, so really trying to help make better decisions in that direction as well. And supporting students who, you might not be going out, but, helping educate them on some pieces, which is, the purpose of this as well. So just those different, phrases or things that people are doing, especially the reason why we're meeting, around St. Patrick's Day or in the future. Because really, I don't think people need an excuse like a holiday to actually choose, it's a Tuesday, so that we're going to go. There isn't really that backing, but, just really kind of breaking down when students, especially first-time students, have those questions or feel like they need to participate. So,
yeah, and I think part of maybe the disconnect in college, and I can speak for myself too, where I saw friendship as saying oh yeah, I'll go out with you, I'll go drink with you, whatever, I'll support you in whatever decision you want to make. Instead of that being our definition of friendship, having it be we have class tomorrow, are you sure you want to do this? Maybe we could do something else. Or how much do you want to drink tonight? Maybe we should only take 3 to the party tonight. Or, that's really what a responsible friendship looks like. So maybe even shifting a little bit of our mindset into hey, I know it's St. Patrick's Day, but we definitely have school the next day. So maybe we should take it easy.
Sure. I think the same thing when it comes to looking out for each other, kind of like what Jenna said, and having that plan is checking in with yourselves throughout the evening. If you're going to go and support each other and you don't have to necessarily be the DD, but, checking in to find where people are, in my role of conduct in Title IX, majority of alcohol related or of Title IX sexual assaults, misconduct related incidences are involving alcohol. And so checking in, just because somebody wants to go hook up doesn't mean that, that's going to be a positive outcome, because we know that if alcohol is involved, consent cannot be given. And so really kind of touching base on all of those, because the sad part is there's been multiple experiences related to alcohol that we have to deal with that outcome. And so really looking out for your friends in that manner, checking in to make sure, hey, maybe just hook up when you're sober. Right now, I think everybody's a little too far gone to actually enjoy things and be responsible with it. So another piece to touch on, those consequences that might be on the backside of a fun night out. So
absolutely. So I guess that brings me to my next question too. What should a student do, Jenna, if a friend appears to be in trouble while drinking?
Yeah, well, and exactly what Jennifer was just saying, I think there's that sense of like, if you're checking in on people regularly and not leaving people isolated when you are out drinking, I think, that gives more opportunity to notice if someone is in trouble and to kind of intervene. So one of the biggest ways that you can be a true friend is to know the symptoms for alcohol poisoning and make sure that someone gets the medical care they need. In this situation, this idea of being a friend for life is very literal. You're actually doing a part to protect a life. So if you notice a friend experiencing any symptoms of alcohol poisoning, it's really time to call 911 and then to actually stay with that person to make sure that they get the medical care they need. It's kind of a two-part thing. You're checking in on them, you're recognizing that something's not okay, you're calling 911, and then you're not abandoning them. You're staying with them and making sure that someone's with them and monitoring them until medical personnel can arrive and take over.
Absolutely. Either Troy or Jennifer, it doesn't matter. Can you tell us about medical amnesty and the responsible action protocol?
Sure, I can. The Good Samaritan Act, or medical amnesty, applies both criminally and through the university. And I'll let Dr. Sabrin answer that if she wishes. But there's requirements, though. You have to stay with the party. And it's all about safety, because people think, oh, okay, my friend here is passed out, but if I call the police, I'm going to get arrested too. So in order to avoid that, they have provided this medical amnesty. So what the person has to do is they have to call 911, they have to give their name, their location, and they have to stay with their party till police and medical services arrive. And that applies not only to alcohol, but also to drugs. And that person who is the medical services have been called for, and the person who stays are both covered under that act.
Yeah, it's one of those that I know a lot of students, don't want the party to stop. They don't want to be the ones that have to end the party. However, just as Troy said, with responsible action protocol, it's the person that calls and stays with the person, gives them their name, explains exactly where they are, and then waits with that person to make sure that they're safe. We've had students who have been at gatherings. They're like, I need to call for help. And somebody yanks their phone out of their hand and throws their phone so they can't call, because they don't want to end the party. But even in this past 2 weeks, and less than the past 2 weeks, there's been a student who has died in Ohio and who has died in Virginia based on, from alcohol poisoning and that overdose of alcohol. And so it's one of those, that's why this conversation is important, as well as knowing and understanding what responsible action protocol is. There's many students that I, will speak with, and we post it on things, we talk about it in our conversations, but they don't understand or don't know exactly what it is. And that's one of those that we need to do a better job to explain that to help keep our students safe. So, that you're at a gathering, and it doesn't have to be your friend. That's the other part. It doesn't have to be the person you came with. It can be somebody it's another student or another person, that you call for and to get that help. Cause that's the important piece. I ask students, would you want somebody to call for you if you had gotten to the point that you needed that assistance? And I'd hope that somebody would call for me, in the same way that you would do it for even a stranger or a classmate that you may or may not know. So, it's one of those, as long as you stick with it and stay with the person, that we will probably have an alcohol education conversation where you might have to go through the educational part of it. but there's no cost to you of any sorts. You're not given a charge of anything. It's just so you're more informed about alcohol, because a lot of times when students don't call, it's because they are intoxicated too and they don't want to get in trouble. So
absolutely.
Spread the word.
Yeah. At the end of the day, for both of these things, for medical amnesty or Good Samaritan and responsible action protocol, saving your life is more important than giving you a charge or giving you a sanction. Like at the end of the day, we want you to be alive. And if that means putting yourself in a position where you're more vulnerable to law enforcement or an RA or whatever, ultimately, like that's a lesser sacrifice. So I guess, Jenna, can you explain some of the signs of alcohol poisoning? Like when should a person get an RA, call the police, et cetera?
Yeah, one of the very first signs of alcohol poisoning is passing out. So if someone doesn't respond when you're gently shaking them, shouting their name, it's unlikely that they're just sleeping it off or they're just asleep. So some other things you may notice if someone is experiencing alcohol poisoning is that their lips may turn kind of a bluish color. Their skin is pretty cool and clammy. They're trembling or shaking or doing other things that seem really out of the ordinary for what someone should normally be doing. And so as I mentioned a second ago, and as we've just been talking about, if you notice a friend or like Jennifer said, someone that you just see at a party or has been drinking, and if you notice them experiencing any of these symptoms, it's time to call 911 and it's time to stay with that person until help can arrive.
Absolutely. I have encountered on campus alcohol poisoning that looks like passing out, shivering, foaming at the mouth, eyes rolling in the back of the head. Obviously, it's like a more severe form of alcohol poisoning, but even at that point, there was some trepidation about calling the police or getting an RA, even when symptoms are that severe, for fear of getting in trouble. So really, at the end of the day, like, number one, passing out. Number two, like discoloration of any kind, shallow breathing, stuff like those are serious symptoms for sure. So if we want to be cautious in how we're consuming alcohol, especially with our friends, what are some other ways students can maintain relationships without alcohol misuse?
Yeah, I think it can be really helpful to actually step back and look at your different friendships and how you spend time together. And so kind of thinking, are there certain people in your life that you only really spend time with when you're drinking heavily and partying? Or are you that person for someone else or certain friends in your life? And if that's the case, challenge yourself to spend more time with people who drink in moderation or not at all. I think there's this assumption sometimes that everybody drinks on campus. We hear that from a lot of our students. And the bottom line is there are a lot of our students that actually don't drink at all or drink very rarely or in moderation. And so kind of actually seeking out individuals that can help you to make those better decisions for yourself. Or even better, like in addition to looking out for those kinds of people, is to be that person for others. And just kind of keeping in mind, if a friendship is based mainly on getting drunk together, you might want to step back and actually ask yourself how genuine of a friendship that actually is, if that's like the primary basis and that's how you're spending the majority of your time. And then I am all about getting creative in how you spend your time with your friends. I went to college in middle of nowhere, Indiana, the state, like literally middle of cornfields, and we did such like fun creative things together that often didn't involve partying. And so I'm not going to sit here and say that you never drink with friends, but don't be afraid to think outside the box. So have a movie night or a game night, or plan an afternoon hike, or a craft night or a video game tournament together. So many different things that you can do. I just don't feel like alcohol has to be a part of every single hangout that you have with friends. So really challenge yourself to take alcohol out of the equation every once in a while and see if you can still enjoy time with friends without needing to be buzzed or drunk.
Absolutely. Those are really great tips, Jenna. Thank you. And I think a lot of times we are not in the middle of a city, like we are in kind of a smaller area, but around us are so many opportunities to spend time outdoors. Obviously, like with COVID, it's a little bit different with like going out to eat and spending time indoors, but going outdoors is always such a great option, especially if you're looking to like increase your endorphins. So we have state parks, we have trails, we have bodies of water that are really great to spend time in. So So that's also a really great way to I like that word, challenge yourself to spend time without alcohol for sure. And since we're kind of running low on time, Jenna, do you mind if I just like speed through these tips for safe drinking? I'm just going to kind of summarize them a little bit, but just put a link in the chat box for our Health Advisory Board YouTube channel. And Jenna and I previously did a Friends for Life event in the fall where we went over these in more detail about how to drink safely or how to adopt new safe drinking habits. So I'm just going to speed through these really quickly. Number one is setting a limit for yourself. So I personally know that like I can only have 3 drinks before I start feeling like uncomfortably drunk, where I'm not sure, like, you know, I want to be sure that I have all of my faculties about me, that I can make sound decisions, that I can like walk without fearing of falling over, stuff like that. Like that's where I feel good. So I know I'm not going to pass 3. Additionally, I'm not going to drink 3 drinks right when I walk in the door. I'm going to space them overnight, over the whole night. That way I can, you know, feel good throughout the night instead of feeling good and then feeling, you know, low as that stimulant or depressant effect wears off. Obviously, drinking water throughout the night is super duper important. Alcohol is a diuretic. It dehydrates your system. Replenishing with water will help you feel less hungover in the morning. Obviously, eating is an important thing because I think, as Rebecca said, alcohol irritates your stomach lining because it's absorbed through your stomach lining. So eating kind of helps that process not be so damaging to your body. Avoiding shots, funneling, shotgunning, those things are, you know, very quick ways to ingest a lot of alcohol all at one time and can get you drunk very quickly, probably quicker than you intended to. And then the last one I'll go over is to avoid drinking if you've had a bad day. And I know that's like our first instinct is to go, well, I mean, you hear it on TV all the time. Mommy needs a glass of wine, or like, I can't wait to have a beer at the end of the night, or just, I've had a long week of classes. Like, I just want to drink and forget. Although it seems like such a short-term stress reliever, at the end of the day, alcohol is a depressant. It's only going to temporarily help you forget your stress of the bad day. It's an avoidance strategy, not a coping skill. So instead of avoiding bad feelings or negative feelings, which are natural and normal and healthy to have, think of ways to get through those bad days instead of going around them, if that makes sense. And like I said, please watch that other video if you're interested in more drinking or safe drinking habits or strategies, because I think they're really important to know for the future.
Anna, can I just jump in real quick with one last point I wanted to make? I thought of this earlier when we were talking about, you know, consequences of drinking. It's not only physical or legal, which are both important, but career-wise, down the road, when you're thinking of applying for jobs and getting jobs, particularly with the Department of Transportation, drinking and driving is an absolute no-no. Drug driving is an absolute no-no. And if you graduate and you're looking to be, you know, a civil engineer, mechanical engineer, something at a place like PennDOT, those things follow you, and DUIs on your record will probably 90% chance, 95% chance eliminate your ability to go forward in an interview process. Even when you're employed here, drinking and driving is unacceptable and is punishable by termination. So think about those things. I know it's hard as a student to think about 10 years from now or 5 years from now when you're being a grown-up, so to speak, but these things get looked at over time, and you just want to be careful and mindful of how you conduct yourself, both as a student and as a recently graduated student, or even internship possibilities. Those things do follow you.
Absolutely. Especially when we have a ton of education majors at Penn State Altoona, and a DUI will preclude you from getting a teaching license. So that's something to always think about too. And when we talked about misdemeanors, like misdemeanors are things that stay on your record or I guess to me, I could be wrong, but look a little bit worse than a summary offense. Because a summary offense could be anywhere from like, I've gotten one for running a stop sign one time a million years ago. So like, but that's a little bit different than a misdemeanor, which looks like a harder hit. So when somebody's looking at your resume and doing a background check, absolutely, that would preclude you from a lot of opportunities that you might otherwise have. For sure. Thank you for sharing that, Monica. I wanted to call out somebody on the chat who said, has there been a significant increase in alcohol or drug-related incidents since COVID began and the amount of on-campus activities declined? I hope this will be getting better with more events taking place, but this is a big concern I had as we had to limit in-person events. Absolutely. Jennifer might be able to speak more to like the violations happening on campus. And I know, and again, Becky, you might be able to speak to this a little bit more. I believe overall, not just on campus, but overall across the country, drug use has gone up substantially. I believe overdoses have gone up also. Jennifer, have you seen anything on campus that would tell you that like, you know, COVID and the situations around COVID have made a spike in drug or alcohol use?
I would say that it hasn't been one that we receive many referrals for. I would say that our referrals received have been less, but I don't believe that it's decreased students drinking. It's maybe decreased the chances of them getting caught in a sense. We have seen several large gathering parties recently, and we've known that they've taken place, especially throughout the fall. I know that there was a social media question answered a little bit ago in the chat. But if we could receive a social media video and it's anonymous, we can't do charges with that. If we receive a video and we can't identify people in it and nobody is going to come forward and say, hey, that's me, we can't address those concerns that way. We see alcohol, but we can't identify folks. So depends on the media piece that we get. But we received some of those in the fall. And then to kind of give you that COVID guideline real quickly, if you have a gathering of 10 or more, it's probation and transcript notation for possibly multiple semesters. If you have a gathering of 30 or more, it's suspension for a semester to start. And so understanding with COVID guidelines that just because you want to host the party of 97 people, it does have consequences if there is, a referral received from it. So I don't believe that we've necessarily, decreased that. I would say that, hey, I would probably guess just like your statistics that it's increased. It's just depending on the referrals that are received. I know Becky wanted to add to that one as well.
No, I was just going to speak on overall overdoses and things like that. They're definitely up, especially in Blair County. We've seen more overdoses already this year than we did total last year. So because a lot of people with COVID, they're not getting the resources that many people who were struggling might have needed. So like groups and things like that weren't happening. And now that we are opening up a little bit and things are available Zoom, it's helping, but there's still a lot of people struggling and they're not getting the help they need. And so it's important, just like you guys were saying, like be a friend, even if you don't know the person, reach out. People are really struggling right now and they just need help.
I think there's a big difference with that Zoom versus the in-person. Like you said, you can't meet in person. I don't want to meet via Zoom. I don't feel connected, and that adds to that disconnect.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, we are at our time limit. I wanted to ask, does any of the other students who are here have any more questions? No? Okay. So
wait, I do have a question really quick. Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Deja.
Wait, so did you say that a DUI remains on your record like forever? Like is you can never get that removed?
I mean, I can say the knowledge that I have. So I think generally for your first DUI, you can be eligible for something called ARD, which will expunge it from your record. Now, from what I understand, like if an employer were to do a background check, like it might still show up that you were I don't know, it is on your record somehow. I'm not sure how true that is. But if you get like a second DUI, that's on your record forever. And does anybody else have anything they want to say about that?
I just know that it's very expensive to get it off your record as well. So you might be able to get it off your record, even if it is a second one, but it's going to cost you a lot of money and a lawyer and some other things. So not worth it.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. I'd rather pay, you know, $20 for an Uber ride than thousands of dollars for legal fees and the ARD program itself. For sure.
Okay,
right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Asia. All right, so this will be on YouTube, like I said, if you want to watch it later or refer any friends to it later. Please fill out the evaluation that is in the chat box. Just sent that. It's probably like midway up at this point. I will be in contact with the winners of the gift cards for today. I really appreciate you guys participating and being here today. And thank you so much for to all of the panelists who are here today too. We really appreciate you being able to give this information to our students. Very helpful. All right, guys, we're going to end now. Have a good day.